hey, I want to save $2,000, by the end of the month. Why? So I can pay for my car repair. Why? Because it's important for me to be able to drive my mom to her healthcare appointment. Why? Because it's important to me to be there for my parents. If you keep on asking yourself the why, it might actually lead you to things that are really important to you.
When do you think is the right time to reflect on your life and think what's really necessary and really important?
Yeah, it's such a great question. And it's really difficult to answer because I've also been in that situation where I've just been going at 100 miles an hour. It was because I experienced things in succession, and every experience redirected my beliefs, helped me to update my belief system and think about the purpose. And
let's talk about creativity, Bradley. When are you the most creative?
Ooh.
Welcome to the Be Yourself podcast, the podcast on expressing your true selves. Today, my guest is Bradley Orford-Hall, who is the founder of xRave Ventures. Bradley, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me on, Sergey.
You're welcome. I can see that you have such a diverse business experience and that this company that you started not long ago works at the intersection of media, music, tech. So can you tell me a little bit more about the xRave Ventures? What is it and why did you start it?
Yeah, for sure. xRave Ventures is really something that's developing in real time, to be honest. And it comes from my own life experience. So I noticed over the years that there is a gap between capital markets and culture. Right? Mm-hmm. I'm somebody that grew up, really attracted to platforms that provide space for a lot of different culture from around the world. The name of the entity is xRave Ventures. I've had my experience, going out raving.
Oh, yes, sir.
Going to different places, that, music and culture is really being platformed. And I noticed that there is oftentimes very limited understanding of this type of business, right? Businesses that I'm calling culturally innovative businesses, and those can be digital or physical. They can be in the digital space. They can be new platforms that surface new types of media, new types of expression. They can also be physical businesses, companies that put on live events, right? Or spaces for people to congregate. And often these businesses, when they are starting out, they require funding and they require, investment. And what I noticed is that oftentimes there is really a gap in understanding between these two communities. And this is the reason why xRave Ventures exists. And I'm currently building out my understanding of all the different ways in which we can hopefully close that gap.
Who are your potential clients? Who is the audience that you help?
So the way that I actually like to phrase it is, what are the problems that we solve?
Okay.
Because, if we were to talk about who would interact with an entity like this, it would actually be founders that are building culturally innovative businesses on one side, and on the other side, people or entities who want to invest in media, culture, innovative type of businesses, right? And so at the intersection of these two groups of people, we have a job to do. The first thing that I noticed is that on the investor side or in the markets, there is a limited understanding of this space or this type of business. There's a lot less data, on this sector, on this industry, culture, media, than other parts of society. Mm-hmm. So there's a data gap that has to be closed. The second thing that I noticed is that oftentimes founders in this sector, they actually struggle to find the right type of capital. They're struggling to find the right type of investor, whether that is angels in other parts of the cultural ecosystem that can help them to grow their brand and their business, or institutional capital that can provide them with the right partnerships and access. But there is a job to do in connecting these businesses with the right type of financing or the right type of investment. The third problem that I want to solve is what I have learned in my journey is oftentimes founders in this space can be incredibly visionary and incredibly talented in terms of, a new type of cultural experience or a new type of media experience that hasn't really been experienced before. But then on the actual business plan side of things, on how to create a sustainable business model, there is sometimes work to be done there. Oftentimes we see some really, really cool, really hot companies that are really doing things differently, and they burn away because the business model was not sustainable. And so I think we can also work with founders to help them not only create businesses that are innovative and bringing people together in new ways, but that the business can also last.
So you said that you noticed the gap, and you also mentioned that you love let's say partying or listening to music or losing yourself in music.
I love culture. I love culture.
Yeah.
I love meeting new people. I love traveling to new places. I like experiencing new things. And I would describe all of these things as culture.
Culture. Okay. Can I ask you, what are the things that contributed the most into the person that you are today, leading to the choice that you made with starting this business?
What contributed the most?
Yeah.
That's a difficult question to answer because a lot of things have contributed to this. But, I think I can speak to why I've arrived in this space of kind of culture and, why I want to kind of do what I can to preserve this aspect of society. And that is because, growing up, I was not somebody who fit in a box. A lot of the messaging sometimes that we get wherever you are in the world, whichever country you live in, there's always society has got to be very rigid and everybody has to kind of fit into their box. And, I come from a very diverse background. And, growing up, I really found that where I felt validated or where I was drawn to was, culture, music culture, popular culture, going online, looking at music videos, discovering all my favorite artists. I had a huge music collection when I was young. And because I think all of these artists from around the world were expressing things and experiencing things that, I felt spoke to the sort of expansiveness of the human experience. And I felt like I didn't necessarily see that in the environment that was immediately around me.
Yeah.
So I was attracted to that, we had a conversation a while back where, we spoke a little bit about our home life and our background. I grew up around a lot of people from different countries around the world. So it was very ingrained in me very early on, the difference and the expansiveness of the human perspective and the wealth of culture that exists around the world. And so I've always been naturally drawn to things that help me to connect with that, right? Because I think through that you understand yourself.
Yeah, absolutely.
And this is, I think, one of the key things that kind of brings us to the present day of why as an adult, why as somebody with, a business career and these things, why I'm drawn to this space and people who are building in this space.
I know that in your career, you had experience with M&A, private equity, management consulting, fintech, lots of things, and you lived in different countries.
Yeah. Yes.
Can you tell us things or stories from your business experience that stand out to you, that made you feel something bigger than other maybe routine stuff if you had in your life?
Yeah, I mean, there are lots,
Pick a few, pick some. Maybe some defining moment that,
I mean, for me, I remember when I was in investment banking, I slept in a cupboard once. That was an experience.
Why would you do that?
I won't. Because, sometimes when you're working hard, you kind of do what you need to do to get work done on time. And I think it was such a, it was completely, I didn't need to do that. Nobody made me do that. It was kind of, I think when you're very eager to show people that you're dedicated and hardworking, and you want to finish the work and be back in the morning and da, 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 da. And I made that absolutely bizarre decision when I was a lot younger, that it would be a logical thing to sleep in a cupboard. So I remember that because it just is a snapshot of, with my limited experience at that age, where my mindset and my work ethic was. So that's one moment. There are lots of different moments, on the path that I've been, but I guess I'm just sharing that one with you because it's quite unusual.
And I really love the post that you pinned on LinkedIn. And you said that I spent 2025 evolving my idea of work and success. So what you just said seems like then the guy that was sleeping in a cupboard had the different definition of success. And
yes.
So can you tell us about the transformation? What was then, what is now, and why?
Yeah, I think a really condensed way to discover that change maybe between then and now is taking stock of what your life actually is. What is real and what is not real. I had a conversation with somebody who I respect recently, and we were talking, and he's also successful, and he's also in a fortunate position. Like, he has more time to think about life and these things these days, right?
Yeah.
And I remember in that conversation, I said, real is real. What is not real is not real. And that doesn't really have any meaning, right? Just if I just say those words by themselves. But what I mean is, when you ask me about the change between then and now, what I had to do on that journey, or, sleeping in a cupboard, right? Using that example, is you may have a certain amount of money in the bank. You may have a fancy title. You may be in some publications, right? And your name may be up in the lights. But what is your life actually? What is your day like in real terms? And for some people, it can be sleeping in a cupboard. It can be having chronic stress. It can be, not feeling deeply unhappy all day. It can be feeling deeply paranoid. I'm not saying I experience all these things, but I relate now to a lot of people who, from a superficial level, will look extremely successful. And on a human level, these people are not fulfilled in their life. And I think the balance that I've been trying to strike since that time that I slept in the cupboard is how you can actually feel fulfilled in your life, and as somebody who wants to keep learning, wants to keep building myself, wants to keep developing, but also build a life that I can actually live in and enjoy and be nourished by, and not necessarily live my life for other people as well, or for the optics of what other people might think.
I'm wearing, this is the t-shirt by the Optimism company. It's Simon Sinek company. Have you heard of Simon Sinek?
Not yet, but I have now.
Yeah, he's the one who's the guy with the second most watched talk on TED. It's about finding your why, right? And the concept of the golden circle, that you do things starting with your why, not because someone buys it, or because for a variety of reasons, but because you go with your why first. So do you think that the why of our personal why changes over time? And do you think we should arrive at the ultimate why? And do you think that people who arrive at this understanding of their real why earlier than later are happier? Or do you think
I do. Mm-hmm. I think that framing of find your why is a great framing. I 100% agree with that framing. I think a lot of people don't actually give themselves the time to find their why. Mm-hmm. A lot of people, they don't actually take time to live intentionally.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people who are very, successful
on paper,
but maybe they don't on paper, right? But they don't have the time sometimes we don't have the time to even really think about why we're doing what we do. We just fall into things. And especially if you're a capable person, it's very easy to just fall into something and be on autopilot, especially if people validate you and they tell you, this is going well, keep doing it. Especially if you're making money for other people.
This is the curse of competence, because a talented person is usually talented in everything. So whatever he does, but it might not be something that they really want. Something that you're good at is not necessarily what you want.
Yes. And I think, in finding the why, it's important to take the time to figure out what that is for yourself. Otherwise, you might be solving somebody else's why.
Yeah. I think this is what happens a lot. I think that it's okay to follow the leader who you share the same vision with, right? Whose values you can find in yourself. But if you follow the leader who is only transactional and all they can do is just, for example, pay you money. I don't know, if your value is to make money at the expense of everything else, I think this is a really finite game. And it's not gonna turn up well for you.
Yeah, I mean, I think money is such a key thing in so many people's minds, right? And most people are focused on their survival, right? Which is a very real thing, right? A lot of people, they're like, I need enough money to pay my rent. I need enough money to get through the day. But there's also an aspect to society where a lot of people, they think to themselves, yeah, I just need a bit more money, or I really want to just have lots of money, or once I make a lot of money and I'm rich, everything will be okay. Yeah. And a lot of people, I really had to change my relationship with money in those early days when I had those experiences that really forced me to think about what it is that I was trying to achieve. Because a lot of people will tell you that they want a lot of money. Things get a lot more fuzzy once you ask them why exactly they need that money and what it is they intend to use that money for.
Yeah.
This is where things, I think, get very fuzzy for a lot of people because, and, people will disagree with me on this, but I will say, money is not real. Money is not real, right? If you are starving and I give you loads of money and you can't exchange it for anything else, you can't actually go buy food, you can't do anything, and we're just in a barren wasteland. If you're in the desert dying, and I drop by you and I say, hey man, here's $1 million, and I just give you $1 million in cash and then drive off and leave you there, you see what that money is going to do for you. People, they want the money, but money has no value at all until it's exchanged for something else.
Yes.
And it's only when you exchange the money for real things that it has value. And a lot of people don't really take time to think about what the real things is in their life that they want.
Yeah. Well, a lot of people think that they can buy fame, right? And fame is very tricky. I myself partly want to get more recognition for what I do, but I think it's a very slippery slope to go after fame. There are shortcuts, like people, like they hack, for example, some viral mechanisms to go viral, and they become celebrities overnight, like popular overnight. But it's really tricky, and I think a person whose psychology is not mature enough, right? This might be a very, very dangerous for them. We see a lot of suicides among people who win lotteries, right? I think there was stats about that. So we should be really, really careful with getting popularity.
I mean, I think fame is an interesting topic, right? Because my question would be, why does somebody want to be famous?
Well, that's
right?
a very...
I think that, why does anybody want to be famous? You know, and I lived in LA for 2 years, you know, and obviously that is where a lot of entertainment is located, and a lot of people who are looking to become famous are there. And, you know, I think there's a deeper question there of, I personally, it's not like my desire to become famous. It's not
You never had one.
Trying. No, I don't think I'm trying to think whether at any point in my life I've desired to be famous. I think the things I desire are like the ability to experience more things, freedom, you know, the ability to feel comfortable, the ability to feel safe, probably, you know, the ability to take care of myself and other people. These are things I want. Being known just for the sake of it is not something that I am seeking.
Yeah.
And I do think that, for example, for me, the reference point is entertainment. You know, people in music or film. Oftentimes, I think when people just want attention, there is maybe a deeper conversation that they have to understand where that comes from.
Yeah, I think likes and views, all that, it's like numbing your internal pain. There is a pain, and you numb it with superficial metrics. And sometimes all we need is just the deep feeling of belonging. So, and I think this is where community. It's interesting because I've been single for my entire life, never had a girlfriend, and right now I'm finally in my first relationships. I'm 36 years old, and just a year ago I started my first relationships. And you know, it's interesting how things are taking care of its other things in my world, take care of itself, as I have someone who I can lean on, and she can lean on me. It's very, very interesting how sometimes just having a really deep connection to someone changes the game and makes you not want to go after all these superficial, hyped goals, right? So right now, I don't even want my business to become super, super big. I'm building this media company, production company, where we help podcasters and YouTubers. But, you know, it's almost if I don't want to grow too fast, because I want to evolve. I had our mutual friend Cornelius on the show, who said he worked with lots of founders who hit like millions of investments. And he said that the human brain cannot evolve at the pace that the money is thrown at your company. So it's difficult to evolve like that and just become rich right away. So I think both things, become famous and become rich. If you want to go after that, you better do this in some kind of a slow and slow manner, or what is the better word to use? Yeah, I'm sorry.
No, I totally get what you're saying, and I think it makes a lot of sense. You know, I think it has a lot to do with energy, right? Or, you know, shifting your circumstances like in 2 seconds can sometimes have a negative effect because you haven't taken time to build your muscle.
Yes.
And be intentional about how you want to build out your life. So the example that you're saying of somebody who goes from like zero to like, you know, $1 billion overnight, you know, that is a very difficult adjustment to go through. And it's not always like a healthy adjustment to go through versus somebody that's kind of slowly
gradually,
over time, gradually, because you have then a lot more ability to kind of, it's a little bit like a firework or something, or driving, you know, a plane. You have the ability to direct it more over time rather than just, you know, shoot off in one direction. You know, so I think it's a very valid point.
Why do you travel a lot? I don't know if can you tell us more if you...
Did you say where or why?
Why did you travel a lot? And maybe you can course correct me if you do this intentionally. Do you change locations? Tell me about how big of a role in your life traveling plays and why.
Huge role. I love to travel.
Oh my.
I love traveling. And I think I always will love traveling, to be honest. And I think I've just always had a curiosity. I think since I was a kid, you know, as I said, there was a period of my life where I was a very young kid and I was meeting people from different places in the world. Ukraine, right, where you are, Mexico, you know, Argentina, Taiwan, you know, Poland, different locations, Japan. And it was always clear to me. So it's clear to me that, you know, there was all of this going on around the world. It wasn't just London or the UK. There was so much more to life and so many more people, and interacting with those people taught me different things. And I grew up and I was always so curious. And I think another reason I was curious is because, you know, in my own family background, you know, I have a lot of family who are different type of heritage, you know? And so I think growing up, people always want to put you in a box, and I never really fit into a clear box, you know? Obviously, you know, I'm Black, you know, but, you know, I have family from, you know, my heritage is, you know, African, you know, Indian, you know, German, Irish, you know, Danish, or Norwegian, you know, there's different things going on. And if you look at my family, my extended family, you're going to see a lot of people looking very different. And so to me, it was just always clear that humanity is this tapestry of difference. And I think I was instinctively drawn to, I want to know what's going on in these different parts of the world. And every, I think, experience that I've had traveling has validated that, because I've always met people. You know, I've traveled all over the world. I've traveled to China. I've traveled to Brazil. I've traveled to El Salvador. I've lived in America. I've lived in Sweden. You know, I've traveled to Malaysia. I've gone to so many different places, and I've met, you know, Indonesia, so many different people. And you always learn things that you wouldn't expect. People always educate you about what it means to live a good life, what is important in life, you know, and I think it is so important, you know, for people to have those experiences where they can. I've actually lost track of the question. Yeah. Why is travel so important to me? It's important to me because of that. I think to know yourself and to know the human experience, you have to travel.
So it helps you
when someone has never traveled, you know,
helps you better understand yourself, right?
Yes, it helps you better understand yourself. It helps you better understand the world. It helps you understand the world around you, why things are the way they are. It helps you better connect with people. I connect with so many people, and it's assisted by the fact that I've traveled to these places. So I can connect with people. Oh, you're from that place, so you've been to that place also, you know? And it's introduced me to so many things, you know, history, self-care, you know, other aspects of life, different perspectives. It's so important.
Well, you mentioned that you, in your early years, you watched music videos and they showed you the world or the environment that felt familiar or felt like something that you want to be a part of, right? So
yeah.
So because I also have this experience when I don't know why, but I feel like I belong in certain places. For example, I've never been to the US, but I really love NBA basketball, and I watch NBA, and I speak. The majority of my language comes from NBA commentators. So I learned the language listening to basketball commentators. And I also love techno music, and I play DJ sets at times. And when you dance among other people, it feels like it doesn't matter what race you are, what ethics or the language you speak, what do you do, what are your social standing or whatever. You just unite. So I think this is why I find the industry which you're in so fascinating, because in a way it erases, wipes off the borders between people, between cultures.
Yeah, it takes away friction, right? It's borderless, and that's why I love it, and that's why I think it's so important. And I think when we look at where we are now, right, where we have a lot of conflict,
yes,
around the world,
yes,
right? And this is a tragedy, it's a tragedy for humanity, because there is so much more that we have in common. And if you want people to hate each other, the first thing that you got to do is separate those people. It's the first thing you got to do. If you want two groups of people to hate each other, you got to separate them. Because, if you had someone living in your house and they were in your family, would you really be violent to that person? No, because you understand them at a deeper level and you help in each other and you have shared history. And I think bringing people together facilitates that mutual understanding. And I think media platforms have the ability to do that. Digital environments, physical environments, they have the ability to do that. It can also go the other way, as we see with social media and these things, but they have the ability also to bring people together.
Let's talk about creativity, Bradley. When are you the most creative?
Ooh. I feel like I was the most creative as a child, honestly. I think that's such a great question, because I am definitely a creative person in ways. I mean, I grew up playing instruments, like I make music, things like this, but so much of the time I'm having like more kind of business focused conversations. So I'm trying to think about what environments make me feel creative. And I think certainly when I'm traveling, my mind is more opened and I'm more kind of in a creative space mentally. I take time sometimes to just sit at the piano. And of course, that's a creative outlet for me when I just take time to just make music for myself and to just play music myself. And, when I go to music events, of course, I go to live music, or I go to a rave, or I go to something like this. This is an environment where I'm going to be feeling more creative. But truly, the time that if you would ask me when I'm actually creating and feeling creative in that artistic sense, is probably when I sit down at the piano. That is like an artist with their kind of easel. Yeah. I'm sitting down and I'm just, there's no agenda. I'm just making sound.
I'm asking you this because I'm reading a creative act by Rick Rubin now. And one of his chapters in the book is called The Seeds of Creativity. And it's interesting that he basically goes on to explain that we gather the seeds all over our life. So what you're doing when you're in a music festival, communicating to inspiring people, you're gathering the seeds, right? Your mind just absorbs all these amazing stories or facts. And then when you're at a quiet place, well, it happens to me when I'm running, for example, sometimes when I'm in a shower, right? Your brain your subconsciousness starts producing stuff that's that you gathered,
100%. Right? I mean, if we're talking about ideas, that's also a different thing. I have most of my ideas in the shower, probably. I just I'm in the shower and immediately I'm like, shit, I got to go write this down.
Yeah, good habit, write this down.
And I think And I think if you were to frame it that way and say, when do I have a lot of my ideas, right? Or when do I have like breakthroughs mentally? It's usually either when I'm, for example, in the shower or when I'm doing exercise. Sometimes in the middle of exercise, because you're in a flow state, you'll just have that mental breakthrough. Or in the shower, it's in these types of moments. Yeah.
I think this, like, the creativity can be split in so many phases, right? But it's like, I remember Simon Sinek, the guy who I told you about, his definition of art was having these 3 imperative steps, like an intention, right? Like you take a piece of paper and you have the intention. Then the act itself, right? Creating the poem, for example, or drawing. And the last thing that is absolutely necessary for the thing to be an art, he says, an exposition. Like, you have to show it. You can't write a poem and put it in your desk, right? So you gotta show it. And I think what media enables us to do is to there's a knock on social media, obviously, with how much attention it pulls in. But at the same time, everyone can showcase their creations, right? And we all can become artists in our own way. We just have to have the intention. Understand, when I say intention, it's not just let me do the video to gather some likes. It's actually, why am I doing this? Why am I doing this post? Right? It goes back to your question, why do I want to get rich, or why do I want to get famous? To do what? Right? So when you do the post, what do you want people to feel? What do you want to them to learn?
I mean, this is definitely one of the results of the kind of the tech evolution that we've gone through, is people now have the ability to showcase their creations and their art in a way that was previously not possible. Yeah. And that's extending to different forms of expression. You know, you can write, if you're a journalist, you can write something on Substack and you can have an audience. We have Suno now. If you want to make a little song, you can do that.
Oh, yes, Suno. Right.
You know, LinkedIn, Instagram, all of these platforms are giving people the ability to showcase their creations and their creativity, which is great. You know, that aspect of it is great.
But do you feel like we have less meaningful creations now? Do you feel? Yeah.
I think the way that I would think about it is what this environment does to people's incentives, right? Like what you're incentivized to do by these platforms and by the way that they reward different types of content. So on the one hand, it's really amazing that we have these open platforms where anybody can essentially create a gallery for the things they want to create. You're a great photographer, you can put it up. You're a great writer, you can put it up. You're a great videographer, you can put it up. You're a musician, you can put it up. So that's fantastic. I think what we then have to think about is like the economic models of like how these platforms work and what these platforms reward, and their own economic model, right? They need to maximize your engagement and things, means that, for example, that will over time shift the types of content that people put up. And I think there's a couple of effects of that, which is that if you think about artists, if you think historically, the most appreciated art is usually developed over a long period of time. Yeah. You know, like some of the painters that are celebrated, like Leonardo da Vinci and all these people, you know. Yeah. You know, these are pieces of art that took time to create, lots of time and in the quiet, you know, to create this, you know, or your favorite music artists, you know, iconic albums, you know, in the 80s, the 90s, you know, like takes time, you know, to produce these masterpieces. Now, people feel like they don't have that time. Hey, if I take a year to create something incredible, the social media cycle's already moved on. So I can't do that. I've got to just put it out there. And I think in that way, it's tricky, because it maybe encourages people to spend less time developing their craft than they might do in the past. And it also means that the space is a lot more crowded. So that will encourage people to do things that are a little bit more attention grabbing just for the sake of attention. So there can be a degradation in quality because of these two factors. But at the same time, you have more voices. So it is a new era, and we have to navigate that.
I love this idea that everyone's rushing to beat everyone's, in terms of speed. But I think the antidote to this could be really coming up with something unique. Well, everyone thinks that they're unique, but obviously Kanye West, who put up this best concert recently, right? The most attended concert in history. He didn't do it overnight. Obviously, he's got the huge fans base, but I don't know. Right now, I personally, I had this really, really frequent publication schedule. Now I cut it in half, and I go slower and more mindful about every single creation. Even podcasts. We had 2 podcasts a week. Now we have only 1 per week, and yeah.
Yeah, and I think part of that is intentionality.
Mm-hmm.
I think when you move a little slower, you can be more intentional. You can think more about who it's for. You can lean into that, and the quality can go up. But it's a judgment.
As we wrap up, Bradley, I think I have 2 questions. The second one is coming out of the first one. When do you think people can start thinking about their purpose, right? Because obviously you mentioned an interesting thing that you are, and maybe people you met in your life are lucky enough to have the time to think about this eternal questions, right? Some people just need to pay bills and feed their family. So when do you think is the right time to just reflect on your life and think what's really necessary and needed and real for us?
Yeah, it's such a great question. And it's really difficult to answer because I've also been in that situation where I've just been going at 100 miles an hour. And I think for me, it wasn't because I was a child and took all day to think about my purpose. It was because I experienced things in succession, and every experience redirected my beliefs, helped me to update my belief system and think about the purpose. And I was forced to think about my purpose through my life experiences. And I think that is what happens with a lot of people. Whatever you're experiencing, people experience all kinds of different things. They experience a change in circumstances, their health, their relationships, their job. These life events force you to consider these things. I think then the deeper question is, in between those kinds of shocks, how can you be more intentional? How can you be more intentional and check in with yourself about why am I doing this? And I think where I would start is probably taking moments here and there, because you could say to somebody, hey, you should read this book or you should listen to that podcast. That's great. Not everybody always has the time to do all of these things. But I think if you can start to really take moments to ask yourself why, just ask yourself that question and maybe write down, maybe do some exercises with yourself. That really doesn't take a long time about why it is that you're doing what you're doing, and maybe ask yourself why several times. Hey, I want to save $2,000, by the end of the month. Why? So I can pay for my car repair. Why? Because it's important for me to be able to drive my mom to her healthcare appointment. Why? Because it's important to me to be there for my parents. Why? Because, And I think if you keep on asking yourself the why, it might actually lead you to the very real things that are really important to you. And when you identify that, it might cause you to change some of your surface level beliefs about some of the things that you're doing today.
This is just an amazing point of view. I really feel like we've given so much in this conversation, and I'm really thankful. And I think I want to do this one more time somewhere in the future, maybe in person. That would be super cool. Any last word? Maybe you can tell people how they can cooperate with you, partner up with you. What are you interested in? Or any last word?
Yeah, I mean, last words, you can find me on LinkedIn, listen to this podcast, obviously follow, be yourself, and I think if you're somebody building anything incredible in the cultural innovation space, I'd love to learn about it. If you're somebody who's looking to invest in that space, I'd love to meet. I think that I love the premise of this show, right? Which is people really leaning into their authenticity and being yourself. And I think the one thing that I would say at the end of this is it takes courage to do that. And it's often really a scary thing, especially if you haven't done it a lot of times, to do that thing. If there's something that is in your mind, that there's something that you've been wanting to do or something that you're passionate about, you may as well do it, because otherwise you're going to keep thinking about it. And that's a waste of your energy. You're going to be at work and you're going to be distracted, right? Or you're going to be somewhere and you're going to be distracted. It takes courage to do it, but it's always worth it. Because if it's playing on your mind, there's a reason for that, and you shouldn't ignore that.
Thank you, Bradley. That was a blast.
Thank you, Sergey.